and welcome to Firstpost Vantage with me, Kaur Saroya. Let's get started. Nepal has been swept by flash floods, the death toll is rising and the devastation is mounting. We will bring you the latest. Who knew the biggest intel leak in Washington could be an Xbox account? Iran has its eyes set on Baron Trump. The target on his head comes with a $10 million price tag. Just when you thought the rhetoric couldn't get any lower and personal, it found the basement and a bounty. Meanwhile, Anthropic has its eyes set on $30 trillion. Yes, trillion, because in this AI race, billions are starting to look like pocket change. At this point, AI isn't just going to take our jobs, it's going to also come for our sense of scale. Kriti Sanon's Rakhi ad has opened a can of worms, or more accurately, a closet of clothes. Apparently, the biggest threat to us as a people is a woman in an attire we don't approve of. And Gen Z is community maxing, which is a fancy way of saying they're finally stepping out and making friends. Seems we've discovered the offline button. You know what they say, inconvenience is the cost of community. All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. Meta agrees to pay US states $16.7 billion. The tech giant has also agreed to impose sweeping new limits on how teenagers use Facebook and Instagram. This ends a landmark trial in California. Meta will now block teens from using its apps at night and impose a default 2-hour cap on their daily use. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits troops at the southeastern front line. This is where Kyiv has claimed recent gains against Russian forces. Zelensky's visit comes as the Ukrainian army faces mass desertion and problems with conscription. Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin discussed strengthening ties. This was their first phone call since reaching an agreement over Moscow's military bases in the country. Russia was a key ally of former Syrian ruler Bashar al-Assad, who was toppled by rebels led by al-Shara in 2024. At least 50 people injured after fireworks explode at a festival in northern Spain. This happened in the municipality of Anoain. Several rockets due to be launched were ignited by sparks of an earlier firework. The celebrations continued as planned despite this incident. Italy's National Football Federation withdraws its support for embattled FIFA President Gianni Infantino. It was over his failed attempt to sell off stakes in the World Cup. Several European national associations have already scrapped their backing of Infantino. Deadly flash floods in Nepal have unleashed total devastation. Over 90 people have died and contact has been lost with more than 400 tourists and pilgrims, including over 100 Indians. These flash floods originated in the Bhotekoshi River in Nepal's Raswa district at around 8:30 a.m. this morning. The flood waters tore through roads, houses and everything else in their path, sweeping away entire stretches of the landscape in their wake. One surveillance video showed people attempting to flee seconds before a devastating mudslide engulfed the border crossing between Nepal and China. Videos online showed roads, bridges collapsing as powerful flash flood water surged through Maliku. One dramatic video showed flood water surging through the Trishuli River in Nepal's Dading district. In the aftermath, Nepal's Prime Minister Balendra Shah urged the Himalayan nation to stand united. In a statement posted on social media, he said, and I'm quoting here, "Please be patient. The government takes full responsibility for your rescue, treatment, food and shelter. In times of such a disaster, we all need to stand together." Now, the flood hit Seabrubesi, a mountain village in the Raswa district of northern Nepal, which also serves as the main gateway to the Langtang Valley trekking region. It is also used by travellers in the Hindu pilgrimage route to Kailash Mansarovar. The areas around the Seabrubesi and Timur in the mountainous Raswa district were severely affected. The Nepali authorities also urged those living along the banks of the Bhotekoshi River to seek higher ground.
तर अब सम्झिनेहरू बालबच्चाहरू चाहिँ सकुशलले छन् अब ठुलो सम्झि चाहिँ नि सम्झिने चाहिँ बगाएर लगेको अवस्था छ र ठुलो सम्झि चाहिँ हराइरहेको अवस्था छ खोजी कार्य भइरहेछ
8-10 वटा ट्रक बगाएको घर बगाएको मान्छे बगाएको मैले देखेँ हृदय विदारक घटनाहरू माथिबाट पनि ट्रकहरू बगाएर ल्याएको देखेँ त्यति ठुलो क्षति मैले देखेँ आजसम्म मैले देखेको थिएन 18 वर्ष भयो तर 18 वर्षमा पहिलोचोटि मैले यस्तो घटना देखेको
Nepal's Water Resources Ministry said hydroelectric projects were among the infrastructure damaged by the floods, along with roads and bridges, as we mentioned earlier. Electricity supply in the area has also been disrupted. And according to the Kathmandu Post, more than 400 tourists and pilgrims have been left unaccounted for. Now, after the early morning flash flood, Nepal's tourism board, which released the figure, said Indians, Americans and Australians, Malaysians and Britons were among those unaccounted for. Authorities in the Himalayan country have started rescue operations on a war footing. The Nepali Army, police, armed police force and 14 helicopters have been heavily mobilized for search and rescue operations. The army said that it had deployed helicopters and disaster response personnel to the affected areas. The country's electricity authority said about 430 megawatts of production capacity, including hydropower and solar facilities, have been damaged. Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted on X that he spoke with his Nepali counterpart Balendra Shah to convey his condolences on the loss of lives. He said that the people of India stand in solidarity with their sisters and brothers in Nepal in this difficult time. India is sending relief material to Nepal on Indian Air Force planes. A consignment of emergency assistance, including medicines and ration, will be sent to the neighbouring country as part of the government's humanitarian assistance and disaster relief initiative. The government is also planning to send National Disaster Response Force or NDRF rescuers to support relief and rescue operations in the affected areas of Nepal. India is also on high alert because flash floods took place in Nepal's upper catchment areas. There is a possibility that the increased water flow could come downstream and affect the same river called Gandak in India's eastern state of Bihar. The state administration has instructed officials of affected and vulnerable districts to closely monitor the situation and also to ensure all necessary arrangements are in place. Tibet has also been impacted, with Chinese media warning of major casualties. Chinese President Xi Jinping also urged all-out search efforts for the missing, as well as stronger monitoring and early warning systems to prevent secondary disasters. As for what caused the flash floods, scientists are exploring a possible link between an ice avalanche and the sudden surge of water. While avalanches can be caused by a number of factors, climate change often plays a role. Remember, Nepal is a danger area for glacier melting as the planet heats up. Nepal, in the rapidly warming Himalayan region, is home to thousands of glaciers which are melting and destabilizing as temperatures rise. According to recent research, ice loss rates from glaciers across the Hindu Kush Himalaya have doubled since 2000, with enormous risk for the nearly 2 million people who live downstream of them. Nepal is particularly vulnerable to glacial lake outbursts, sometimes described as inland tsunamis, where the pools of water formed by melting glaciers become so full that they burst their banks, sending water and debris cascading down steep mountainsides. A similar flood in the same region last year was traced to a glacial lake outburst in neighboring Tibet. However, experts have not yet determined what role, if any, an outburst may have played in the current devastating flooding. Now, earlier we spoke with Nepali MP Manish Jha from Kathmandu. He shared the latest information he had received from the government. This includes the scale of destruction after the flash floods, the latest number of those dead and missing, and the status of rescue and relief operations. Take a look.
It's like everything, it started at 8:45 this morning, and it was like kind of very, very hard to believe whatever is going on and everything. So it's like so far it looks like it's going to be one of the biggest disaster of decade for Nepal.
All right. Of course, it's absolutely unfortunate what we're seeing play out right now as well. How do you assess the preparedness and the measures in place to tackle this?
The government has been very active, and all the minister council and minister, and also the good part of government side is government, prime minister, and all the relevant ministers. They all are active, very active in ground. So also it looks very good cooperation from the other political parties. So all the politicians have followed their political parties and background and principle. They have come together to work together to solve all those issues. So preparedness from the government side, action, Nepal Army and Armed Police Force and police and all volunteer organizations, they are already in actions. But the data is coming up. Whatever the data and updates are coming up is very, very shocking.
If you wanted to annoy Donald Trump, there are plenty of options. Call him a bad president, say he can't make America great again, question his business record, or say his hair is fake. But Tehran decided to skip these options and instead chose an even more explosive way to target the US president. Iran went after his youngest son, Barron Trump. Iran state television recently broadcast a segment describing ways to kill Barron Trump. They even announced a $10 million bounty on him. In the video titled "Where to Kill Barron Trump," Barron's movements are described and visually depicted. The clip claims that Trump's son is fully monitored. The video also makes specific claims about him, like how Barron communicates through voice and text on Xbox, the popular video gaming console owned by Microsoft. The video also claims that Barron's accounts on Xbox and the messaging platform Discord have been discovered. The US Secret Service says it is aware of the video. It says it is investigating if there is any threat towards Barron, but it denied to discuss details of operational security, as it is a matter of protective intelligence. Now, this is not the first time Iran has threatened Trump's family. The regime knows Trump does not respond well to humiliation. It has spent years threatening him. Following the 2020 US killing of Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, even in this current conflict, Trump admitted that he faces assassination threats from Iran after he was reported changing flights following the NATO summit in Turkey's Ankara.
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
During the days-long funeral events for the slain Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in July, loyalists of the regime were seen holding posters with the words "Kill Trump." They even offered a bounty for whoever avenged their leader's death. Iran has also threatened other members of his family, including his wife. the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump. Then there's Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister recently said that Iran tried to kill one of his sons. Now, Netanyahu has two sons, but he did not mention which son he was referring to here. Strip away the outrage, and here's what you get. A regime doesn't broadcast bounty ads on state TV when it's winning. It does it when it's bleeding. Tehran is struggling economically. Its currency is dead. The regime is looking at a leadership vacuum after the death of Khamenei, and a population that came out onto the streets against its own government. So what do you do when you can't project strength at home? You manufacture it abroad. Threatening an American teenager on television is cheap theatre for a domestic audience that needs to believe that the regime still has teeth. This demands a question. Why would Iran deliberately give Donald Trump a personal reason to escalate? This is the same administration that is already pursuing a massive economic pressure campaign against Tehran. And now Tehran has essentially walked into that room and said, here is another reason. That is called intimidation. The problem with intimidation? Iran may believe the video demonstrates reach, but intimidation only works when the other side believes escalation will remain controlled. This threat destroys that assumption. Because if something actually happened to Baron Trump, the consequences would be almost impossible to contain. You see, Baron Trump has mostly stayed away from the political circus surrounding his father. He's 20 years old, not responsible for his father's foreign policy. He's not a cabinet secretary. He's not a military commander, and he did not negotiate America's Iran policy. He did not order the strikes. He did not impose the sanctions, and he certainly did not kill Iranian officials. So when a government or government-linked media apparatus starts threatening the family of an enemy leader, it's no longer merely signaling military resolve. It is signaling something much darker, the willingness to make it personal. And Donald Trump has never been particularly famous for separating the personal from the political. For him, insults become grievances. Grievances become vendettas, and vendettas can become policy. Donald Trump is many things. Predictable is not one of them. Trump doesn't exactly process personal attacks by opening a spreadsheet and weighing the pros and cons. He processes them the way the rest of us process someone stealing our parking spot. Except he has the nuclear codes. Iran thought it was playing psychological warfare with Trump. That's a dangerous game, because he can play the victim and the avenger all at once. Forget football season or fashion week. The only season tech bros care about right now is the AI IPO season. And if you thought SpaceX's record-breaking IPO tested the limits of an obscure financial metric, Anthropic could push it even further. The maker of AI assistant Claude is preparing for its own Wall Street debut. And if reports are true, it wants to tell investors that its potential revenue opportunities are above $30 trillion. You heard that right, $30 trillion. A number so massive that it eclipses the entire annual economic output of Italy, Canada, Brazil. To be clear, this is not Anthropic's valuation. It is the size of the market it believes AI could potentially target. And yes, it's because it wants to top SpaceX's $28.5 trillion estimate. All this for the promise of AI, a software designed to automate tasks and make the most banal tasks even more so. Welcome to the AI IPO circus, an age where tech bros are competing on the same premise. AI surpasses humanity. Humans become obsolete as a species, and what matters is making sure your version of AI is the one that wins. Where the most powerful people alive seem so unbothered by what we seem to be losing. Our attention spans, our critical thinking, our basic competence at things we used to just know how to do. And so uninterested in being accountable to anyone about it. But let's step back for a moment. Because Anthropic is not just another AI startup. It was founded in 2021 by former OpenAI executives. The company built its reputation around Claude, an AI assistant that competes directly with OpenAI's ChatGPT. But Anthropic found a particularly lucrative niche, coding. Its Claude Code product helps software developers write, edit, and fix computer code. And businesses have been willing to pay for it. That has sent Anthropic sales soaring. In May, the company said its annual revenue run rate had crossed $47 billion. Now, that term sounds more complicated than it is. Revenue run rate simply takes the company's current pace of sales and projects what it would make over a full year. It does not mean Anthropic has already earned $47 billion. It means its recent sales pace would equal about $47 billion over a year. And by the end of July, that figure had risen above $65 billion. Now, Anthropic is projecting something much bigger. Between $190 billion to $200 billion in revenue in 2028. That is the future investors are being asked to buy into. And this is where the $30 trillion figure comes in. Anthropic is expected to tell investors that its total addressable market, or TAM, is more than $30 trillion. And TAM is just a fancy way of saying how much money could exist in a market if a company could serve all of it. For Anthropic, the calculation looks at the work that AI models could potentially do. So no, Anthropic is not saying it will make $30 trillion. It is saying the economic activity it could potentially target is that large. And that is an enormous claim. The United States economy itself is over $30 trillion. So Anthropic is effectively asking investors to think about AI not as another software industry, but as a technology that could touch a huge part of the global economy. Obviously, there is a need, there's a reason that it needs investors to think that big. Building the most powerful AI models is incredibly expensive. Anthropic needs chips, computing power, data centers, and massive amounts of electricity. It also needs to keep hiring people who can build these systems. All of that, as you can imagine, costs money, and lots of it. And that is why the IPO matters. The Claude parent confidently filed to go public in June. Its last funding round valued the company at $965 billion. And reports say it could seek to raise more than $100 billion, and that could value Anthropic at around $2 trillion. If that happens, it would be one of the biggest stock market listings ever. And like we said before, it would be an attempt to beat SpaceX. The Elon Musk-led company raised over $85 billion in its June IPO. And it had also put forward a $28.5 trillion TAM. Anthropic now wants to go one better. But there's a big question here. How much of this future is real? And how much is a story being sold to investors? Because Anthropic is growing fast, but so is its spending. At the same time, the competition is also becoming intense. OpenAI, Google, Meta are still in the race. Meanwhile, Chinese AI companies are also catching up quick. Plus, Anthropic's political problems are also piling up. Earlier this year, it clashed with the Trump administration. The US government cut off its contracts after Anthropic refused to give the military unfettered access to its AI models. The government also labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk. The company has challenged that decision. And the dispute is still playing out. So the IPO is not just about Anthropic, it is a bet on how big the AI economy can become. Anthropic is asking investors to believe that today's massive spending can create even bigger profits tomorrow. That is the bet. And Wall Street is about to decide how much it is worth. 24 hours ago, the US made a surprise move. CIA Director John Ratcliffe boarded a US military aircraft and made a surprise landing in Moscow. He met his Russian counterpart in the unannounced talks. That's how spies like to operate, quietly in the shadows. Now, here comes Russia's countermove. Moscow is preparing to launch a nuclear-powered missile, also known as the Flying Chernobly, because it leaks radioactive material when it flies. The announcement was made by Kremlin-backed state media, which comes after the CIA director concluded his short stint. Talk about the messaging coming from Vladimir Putin. So what is this nuclear-powered missile and why is Russia preparing to launch it now? Our next report is more.
On the 25th of August, open-source flight trackers were abuzz. This is after a strange US military aircraft took off from the States, made a stopover in Latvia, and then entered Russian airspace. The aircraft landed in Moscow, which fueled several conspiracy theories on social media. Then, the US confirmed that CIA Director John Ratcliffe was aboard the mystery C-17 aircraft. Ratcliffe met his Russian counterpart in Moscow and then flew back. The Kremlin confirmed the interaction, but denied reports of the CIA director meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I can only tell you that there were contacts between the special services. I can tell you that there were no meetings with the president of Russia. That is all I can tell you on this subject.
24 hours after the CIA director visited Moscow, Russia made its move. Kremlin-backed state media has announced the test launch of the Burevestnik missile. It's a weapon that's powered by a nuclear reactor and has unlimited range. In recent days, flight tracking radars have revealed increased aerial activity in northern Russia. Earlier this week, 2 IL-976 command and telemetry aircraft landed at the Rogachivo airbase in Novaya Zemlya. Then, 4 IL-76 strategic airlifters also landed at the same airbase. This airbase is about 170 kilometers away from Pankovo, a special launch complex built mainly for the Burevestnik missile. So, what is this missile, and why is the world watching what's happening in northern Russia? The Burevestnik is a nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed missile. It's also known by its NATO nickname, Skyfall, because when it flies, it leaves behind a trail of radioactive material. The missile is powered by a mini nuclear reactor. It has unlimited range and can remain airborne for days, even weeks. The Burevestnik has previously been test-fired at least twice. The first test was carried out in 2019, which ended in a fatal explosion, killing several Russian engineers. However, the second test, that was carried out in October 2025, was successful. The missile carried out a 15-hour non-stop flight, covering around 14,000 kilometers. But the missile did leak radioactive material across its entire flight path, earning it a second nickname, the Flying Chernobyl. Moscow is aware that the missile leaks radioactive material. That explains the deployment of the IL-976 aircraft. Based on the IL-76 platform, the IL-976 has been designed for a special purpose, to track and monitor long-range missile tests. But the aircraft can also detect nuclear and chemical radiation. The IL-976 was also actively deployed during the 2019 and 2025 Burevestnik tests. And now it seems that the special aircraft has to repeat that task. As per reports, Russia has only deployed the IL-976 to the Rogachivo airbase twice in recent years, and that was for the 2 Burevestnik missile tests. Now they're back at the airbase for a third time. So why is the possible test happening now? The first reason could be technical advancements. Russia has been working on this missile for nearly half a decade, and the weapon is now closer to official induction. Putin has also acknowledged that the missile could soon be operational. Second is strategic signaling. A nuclear-powered missile with an unlimited range is a simple reminder to the West: you can run, but you can't hide, because everything is within this missile's striking range. Putin wants the West to know that they can build the interceptors, they can build the fighter jets, and they can huddle together in a coalition. But Moscow will always have a weapon that will keep the West on edge. Russia may soon put the Flying Chernobyl into the sky again. And this time, the announcement comes right after the US tried to sneak in a surprise by sending the CIA director to Moscow unannounced. But that's not how Putin likes to do things anymore. The former spy turned statesman seems to have left the spook life behind and is now focused on getting the message across, strapped to a nuclear-powered missile.
Zohran Mamdani is making headlines again because he has a message for India again. This time he is not talking about India's leadership or Kashmir or India's politics. He is talking about the RSS. That's the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, a voluntary organization in India that promotes the ideology of Hindutva. The RSS is also known for encouraging the idea of a Hindu nation. The group's chief, Mohan Bhagwat, is in New York. He will address a private event at the Madison Square Garden on the 29th of August. More than 5,000 people will be in attendance. RSS says the event is part of their global outreach initiative. But New York's mayor is throwing tantrums. Zohran Mamdani says he does not support the RSS event. He has called the group an exclusionary movement. Listen to this.
My mother's family is all still in India, and the vision of India that I was taught by my family and the one that I grew up being very familiar with was of a pluralistic society, of a secular republic that believed in the belonging of each and every person who was from India. And it has been incredibly troubling to see the rise of a movement that is predicated on an exclusionary vision of any country, frankly.
When the New York mayor was further asked about the gathering, here's what he said.
I don't support the rally, but I don't know if the city has any jurisdiction on canceling a private event.
So Mamdani doesn't support the RSS event, but he can do nothing about it. After all, it is a private function. Mamdani has realized the limitations of his office. But this is where the story gets interesting. Mamdani is not just commenting on an event in New York. He is making a statement on the ideological direction of India. And this isn't new. Mamdani repeatedly comments on India's politics. In the past, he has called India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi a war criminal. He has also opposed New Delhi's revocation of Article 370 of the Indian Constitution that removed Jammu and Kashmir's special status. And now Mamdani is commenting on the RSS and its chief. For someone whose actual portfolio is potholes, rents and the New York subway, foreign policy seems like an overreach. So where does the political obsession come from? Simple, his heritage. Mamdani is half Indian and half Ugandan. His mother hails from India, his father from Uganda. Zohran Mamdani says his mother's side of the family still lives in India and that his views about India are shaped by the India he knew growing up. Now, diaspora communities often debate on the politics of their ancestral lands. That explains Zohran Mamdani's repeated obsession with India. But his outrage seems selective, rather performative, because Mamdani has conveniently picked topics that fit his narrative. Let's break down that hypocrisy for you. And for that, we first go to Mamdani's place of birth, the African nation of Uganda. Uganda is ruled by Yoweri Museveni, a highly controversial leader who has been in power since 1986. Museveni has been accused of violent crackdowns, enforced disappearances, and silencing the opposition. That has allowed Museveni to stay in power for 4 decades. Yet, Mamdani, who has an opinion on almost everything under the sun, has called out Ugandan president just once, that too back in 2016. So why does Mamdani stay mum on Museveni? The answer is real estate. You see, Zohran Mamdani calls himself a democratic socialist. He frequently tells New Yorkers to abolish private ownership of property while he himself is guilty of owning land in Uganda. As per the Ugandan government records, the New York mayor owns 4 acres of land in the African nation, worth almost $250,000. That does explain the silence. Now let's come to point number 2. Zohran Mamdani calls India's Prime Minister a war criminal. He calls Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the orchestrator of a genocide. Mamdani even wants Netanyahu arrested, even though he doesn't have that authority. Clearly, he's not a fan of either of the 2 democratically elected leaders. So who has Mamdani shown support for? Let's begin with a man named Anwar al-Awlaki, a Yemeni American who became an Al-Qaeda leader. So Mamdani openly supported a terrorist. He blamed the United States for radicalizing the Yemeni American. Mamdani believes the US forced al-Awlaki to join Al-Qaeda. The list only grows from here. During his mayoral race, Mamdani took a soft stance against Hamas. Though he called October 7th attacks a war crime, he dodged a direct question about Hamas laying down weapons. So these have been Mamdani's views about others. But what about his current homeland, the United States of America? Zohran Mamdani repeatedly calls out US President Donald Trump. If you go through Mamdani's social media feed, you'd think a showdown is imminent. But the reality is quite different. Mamdani has met Trump at least twice since becoming New York's mayor, and both times it has been nothing but giggles and laughs. Mamdani looks like a shy school-going child standing next to a grandpa-like schoolmaster. So here's our friendly advice to the New York mayor. You have every right to a political opinion, but you hold a public office. The least you can do is apply the same standards for all. Outrage cannot be restricted to India because Uganda and the United States are no beacons of utopia. By commenting on issues that go beyond New York, Mamdani has turned himself into a one-man foreign policy commentary desk. And here's a reality check. New York has no shortage of problems. Housing is unaffordable, crime is rising, healthcare is non-existent, and infrastructure is crumbling. Once you become a mayor, you're no longer an activist, you have responsibilities. So dear mayor, put down the microphone and perhaps focus on New York.
We are totally delighted that this process is complete and very happy to have Air India back in the Tata Group. We look forward to working with everyone to create a world-class airline.
Air India was supposed to be Tata's great aviation comeback story. In 2022, Tata bought the airline back from the government. This was after 69 years of state ownership. Tata was taking back the airline it had founded, and it wanted to give Air India a fresh lease of life. A new fleet, better service, a global network, and most importantly, a profitable airline. 4 years later, Tata is facing a very different reality. The airline has lost more than $2 billion in 1 year. $2 billion. And a new report claims it is seeking another $1.5 billion from its owners. Let us put that into perspective for you. Air India is owned by Tata Sons and Singapore Airlines. Tata owns about 74.9% of Air India. Singapore Airlines owns the other 25.1%. So this is not just a question of Air India losing money. Its owners are now being asked to put in more money. But why? What has gone wrong with Air India? There's no single answer. The problems have come from several directions. First, the airline Tata inherited needed a massive rebuild. Air India had years of underinvestment behind it. Its fleet was aging. Many of its cabins were outdated. Its systems needed to be rebuilt, and it needed more technical staff. Tata's answer to that was a 5-year transformation plan. It was called Vihan.ai. The group ordered more than 500 new aircraft. It also merged Vistara into Air India and brought Air India Express into the group's larger plan. The aim was to build a much bigger airline, but the rebuild has been slower than expected. Aircraft deliveries have faced delays, supply chain problems have hit the industry, and refurbishing the old aircraft has taken time. So Air India is still flying a mix of newer aircraft and legacy planes, and that rebuild has come with a heavy price tag. Like we said, Air India Group lost more than $2.3 billion in the financial year that ended March 2026. That was more than double the loss a year prior. And Singapore Airlines is feeling that pinch too. Its accounts showed an 846 million Singapore dollar loss from its share of Air India's full year losses. That's about 666 million US dollars. Singapore Airlines has said it remains committed to Air India, but the scale of the losses explains why the airline is now looking to its owners for more capital. But the losses are not coming from the rebuild alone. Air India's international operations have also taken a hit. Pakistan closed its airspace to Indian Airlines. That forced Air India to take longer routes. Then came the West Asia war. Flight times got longer, fuel costs went up, and Air India had to cut international flights. Some routes were suspended, others were reduced. That meant less flying and less revenue. Just when Air India needed both, the biggest blow came in June last year. An Air India Boeing 787 crashed after taking off from Ahmedabad. 260 people were killed. The investigation is still underway. But the crash changed the safety conversation around Air India. It came under intense regulatory scrutiny. Besides, other compliance failures added to that pressure as well. Last year, regulators found that an Air India A320 had operated multiple flights without a valid airworthiness review certificate. Now, let me break that down for you. This is a document that confirms an aircraft has been reviewed and that it met the required airworthiness standards. In other words, the plane was carrying passengers without the required certificate in place. Air India has acknowledged that its processes and compliance culture need an urgent overhaul. But how long will that take? We don't know yet. And this is where Air India turnaround starts to look very different. Because this is no longer just about buying new planes or building a bigger network. Air India now has to fix how it actually operates. And that has put pressure on the people running it. Campbell Wilson, the CEO who led Air India after its return to Tata ownership, is leaving the airline. He will step down at the end of September. And his successor is not another Tata insider. His name is Tewald Gebremariam. He's the former CEO of Ethiopian Airlines, and the choice tells us something. Tata now needs a different kind of leadership. Tewald has experience handling crises. He led Ethiopian Airlines through the 737 MAX crash in 2019. It killed all 157 people on board. He also led the airline through the COVID-19 pandemic. Now he faces a different challenge. He has to make Air India safer, more reliable, and less loss-making. But the buck does not stop with replacing the airline CEO. The pressure has also reached the top of the Tata Group. N. Chandrasekaran, the chairman of Tata Sons, is also stepping down from his role next year. His exit comes after disagreements with Tata Trusts. And Air India's performance has been part of that wider pressure. It was one of the biggest bets of Chandrasekaran's tenure. And that has clearly not worked in his favor. Tata Sons now says the full turnaround of the airline can take up to a decade. So what does all of this mean? Tata has not walked away from Air India, and neither has Singapore Airlines, but the original vision has become a much more expensive one. The airline needs more money, it needs more time, and it needs a new CEO to deliver the turnaround. The question now is simple. How much more will Air India cost its owners? And after all that money, how long will it take before the airline finally starts making profit? Let's talk about tradition, with regard to Raksha Bandhan to be specific. Traditionally, every year, sisters tie a thread around their brother's wrists, a ritual built around love, protection, and the promise that a brother will stand by his sister. Over the years, the traditions surrounding Rakhi have evolved. Now, sisters too tie Rakhis to each other. Various interpretations of the tradition have been openly accepted, because beneath all the ceremony is something quite uncomplicated. I have your back. The rituals evolved. But when it comes to clothes, somehow, these evolving trends and interpretations should stop. We're sure by now you know where we're going with this. This year, a woman celebrated Rakhi in an advertisement. Actress Kriti Sanon's Rakhi advertisement has since been pulled. It sparked a huge debate, and it left us with some rather uncomfortable questions. Ladies and children of ladies, what are we telling our sisters we need to protect them from? Because the answer in this case seems to be their own clothes. An advertisement featuring Sanon became the center of a backlash over her Indo-Western outfit. Kangana Ranaut criticized the campaign, questioning why Sanon would tie a Rakhi to her brother dressed the way she was, and calling the ad intentionally creepy. Kriti Sanon responded and frankly asked the question at the heart of this entire controversy. When will we stop telling women what to wear? She argued that the essence of a festival lies in its emotions and traditions, not the clothes someone wears. And she pointed out that her own understanding of Raksha Bandhan extends to her sister and even her dogs. Her sharpest line was that culture and tradition are in a woman's heart, not in her neckline. Let's go back. This ad shows Kriti Sanon in an Indo-Western outfit, a bralette-style blouse, cape and draped skirt, tying a Rakhi to her brother and her pet dog. A section of social media objected, calling the outfit inappropriate for Raksha Bandhan and accusing the campaign of disrespecting Indian traditions. Jiva, the company behind this ad, has since withdrawn it, saying it respects Indian culture, traditions and festivals, and apologized if it inadvertently hurt sentiments. Leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi has chimed in too. He backed Sanon, sharing her statement and arguing that what a woman wears, what she does and where she goes is her choice. He ended it with "smash the patriarchy." And suddenly, a jewelry advertisement had become a proxy war between tradition, feminism, politics and women's autonomy. But beneath all the noise is a much simpler question. What are we telling our sisters? That on a festival supposedly about their protection, their clothes decide how much protection they can be afforded. That the responsibility for preserving Indian culture rests yet again entirely and disproportionately on what a woman chooses to wear. Because if that is the message, it's a rather extraordinary one to send on Raksha Bandhan. Let's be clear, you are allowed to dislike this ad. You're allowed to think the styling was probably not to your liking. You're allowed to think that the ad got the cultural context wrong. But there's a line between criticizing the ad and policing the woman in it. Why does a woman's clothing become the shorthand for whether she respects her culture? Why is her body where we choose to draw the line between tradition and disrespect? And why, when a woman exercises her autonomy, does the conversation so quickly become about whether she has exercised it in the right clothes? We would argue that this sloppy oversimplification and homogenization of Indian culture and tradition is more concerning than a bralette. Because the argument seems to rest on a very particular idea of traditional India. One in which Indian women dress in a prescribed way, and anything outside that prescription is somehow an assault on tradition. But India has never dressed in one uniform. Our clothes have changed across regions, communities, generations, centuries. Styles have traveled, fabrics have evolved, silhouettes have changed. Even the way we drape something as quintessentially Indian as a sari has never been singular. Tradition is not frozen in a photograph. It is something people inherit and then reinterpret. Why is the woman always the battleground? This is what makes the outrage so exhausting. A woman wears something revealing and suddenly we are discussing her character. A woman wears something traditional and we congratulate her for being respectable. There is apparently no outfit in which a woman can simply exist without her clothes being turned into a statement about morality. And now they are being turned into a statement about culture too. How much cultural responsibility are we going to keep stitching onto women's clothes? There's a particularly bitter irony here. Traditionally, if Raksha Bandhan is about a brother's promise to protect his sister, perhaps we should spend less time worrying about what she is wearing and more time asking what she needs protection from: harassment, violence, discrimination, the constant policing of her choices. The endless suggestion that if something happens to her, perhaps she invited it by what she wore, where she went, or how she behaved. We have spent generations teaching women that their safety is conditional on their conduct. Now we seem to be teaching them that their culture is conditional on their clothing. Enough. We do not need to turn a woman's wardrobe into a test of her cultural worth. You can respect Indian traditions without dictating what Indian women wear. You can question an advertisement without questioning a woman's dignity. You can love tradition without turning it into a weapon against women's autonomy. Certainly, our culture isn't fragile enough to be threatened by a bralette, a blouse, or a woman's choice of clothing, is it? Grab onto your knitting needles and assemble your crochet hooks, because Gen Z, the generation that turned no cap into a personality and Riz into word of the year, have made a revolutionary discovery. They found out that other humans exist in person without a screen between them. After years of doom scrolling through wars, layoffs, climate disasters, relationship advice, and strangers explaining why your attachment style is ruining your life, Gen Z seems to have reached a conclusion. Instagram cannot hug you. And that is where the latest Gen Z obsession comes in: community maxing. The name sounds like something cooked up in a Silicon Valley boardroom by people who say human connection while sipping on oat milk latte. But the idea is very simple. Join a book club, go hiking, learn pottery, knit, play a sport. Attend a social club. Meet people who exist outside your Wi-Fi router. Basically, Gen Z discovered what your grandmother knew all along. You need people in your life. And perhaps that's the most ironic part of this entire trend. The generation accused of killing the office, the phone call, the family dinner, and sometimes even eye contact, is now rediscovering the radical concept of hanging out, calling it community maxing, calling it touching grass. The name may be new, the science isn't. For decades, psychologists have understood that human beings need repeated, meaningful social interaction, not just followers, not 47 people watching your story in a virtual world. Because you can have 1,200 Instagram followers and still have nobody to call when your life falls apart. You can have a WhatsApp group with hundreds of unread messages and still feel completely alone. That is the doom scrolling paradox. The more connected we become digitally, the easier it can become to feel socially bankrupt. And young adults are paying the price. Research has found extremely high levels of loneliness among people aged 18 to 29. 1 in 3 reported feeling isolated. A 2025 Healthy Mind study found that 52% of college students reported high levels of loneliness. And Harvard's research on young adults paints an equally grim picture. Nearly 40% say they had only 1 or 2 caring friends. 12% said they had no caring friends at all. 40% said that they felt they mattered to people only a little or not at all. And 60% wanted something incredibly basic. Reach out, ask how I am, actually listen. Think about that for a second. The most technologically connected generation in history is asking for something so simple, someone who notices when you're not okay. Even technology companies have realized where this is going. Social life app Pi has launched community homes designed to keep people connected before and after events, essentially trying to make sure a community doesn't disappear the moment the RSVP list closes, which is both useful and hilariously dystopian. We have invented an app to remind humans to keep being human. Soon there will probably be a notification saying, you haven't had spontaneous human interaction in 6 days, would you like to reconnect with a mammal? But jokes aside, the underlying shift matters because the community gives you something the algorithm cannot. It gives you context. A hiking group knows you hate uphill climbs. A book club knows you always finish the book 3 days late. Your friends know you're saying, I'm fine, when you're obviously not. This is called co-regulation. It's unbelievably simple, ancient, borderline, magical thing that happens when your nervous system calms down just because someone safe is sitting next to you. You get the feeling, right? That cannot be doom scrolled into existence. No algorithm has cracked it. No app notification replicates the specific relief of someone actually asking how you're doing. And then, wildly, waiting for an answer too. So maybe community maxing isn't a trend. Maybe it is Gen Z quietly admitting that the internet was never designed to raise a village. And at the end of the day, humans were never meant to be logged in and lonely. Do you ever think that humans are sleepwalking to their own destruction? If you do, you might be slightly off because running seems to be a more apt word. And the ones doing the running are Chinese robots. A humanoid robot called the Tiangong Ultra has broken a world record. It has beaten the 100-meter sprint record set by Usain Bolt. And the robot has done this not once but twice. During the ongoing World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, this is a new technological milestone. But is this something to celebrate or to be extremely worried about? Here's our report.
That was the moment that the Tiangong Ultra broke Usain Bolt's 100-meter record. Usain Bolt is the fastest man alive. The Jamaican legend set the record for the fastest 100-meter sprint in 2008. This was during the Reebok Grand Prix in New York. He ran 100 meters in 9.715 seconds. Then he bettered his own record at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And finally, in August 2009, he ran 100 meters in 9.572 seconds. That's why he's called Lightning Bolt, and he's the fastest human the world has ever seen. His record still stands today, over 17 years later. He's still the world's fastest human. However, he's no longer the fastest humanoid. That record now belongs to the Tiangong Ultra. It has beat Bolt's record not once, but twice. The Tiangong Ultra is a humanoid robot developed by the Beijing Innovation Center of Humanoid Robotics. The company is also called X-Humanoid. The Tiangong Ultra is a contender at the World Humanoid Robot Games taking place in Beijing. It ran the 100-meter sprint against other robots. During the 100-meter preliminaries, the robot broke Usain Bolt's record. It clocked 9.39 seconds. And then, during the semi-final, the Tiangong Ultra ran 100 meters in just 8.85 seconds. It beat Bolt's time by almost an entire second. And here's why this is getting so much attention. This isn't like a car being faster than a human. This is a humanoid robot. It has legs, not wheels. And it ran faster than the fastest man ever. And let's address the elephant in the room. The robot didn't exactly stop. It slammed into a padded wall. For some, it's hard to be impressed when the feat ended like that. But it should be noted that this isn't always the case. Here's footage of the 400-meter sprint. The Tiangong ran this race too. It ran along the circular track and it managed to stop without the help of a wall. And the robot broke the human world record here as well. The Tiangong ran 400 meters in 38.15 seconds. That's faster than the 43.03 second record set by South Africa's Wade van Niekerk. So the Tiangong holds the record for the fastest 100 meter and 400 meter sprint by a humanoid robot. And who knows how long that'll last, simply because of the pace at which the robots are getting faster. The Tiangong ran and won the 100 meter sprint last year as well. But last year, it won in 21.50 seconds. And now, the record is 8.85. That's a massive boost in just a year. So who knows what records the next robot games will break. But all this begs the question, is this really a good thing? Why are Chinese firms making robots that can outrun even Usain Bolt? What real-world application do you see this having? Take a look at the Tiangong in action again, and imagine gun turrets on its chest, or on the hands, arms, elbows. Think about that robot running through a battlefield, firing hundreds of rounds per minute. And that's not even the worst case scenario, as fans of the Terminator franchise are well aware. How long until one of the tech billionaires out there develops a Skynet? That's an artificial superintelligence system, for those of you who haven't seen the movies. Now imagine AI plugged into robots like the Tiangong Ultra and its successors. Suddenly, the T-800 Terminator looks like a distinct possibility. But even putting the apocalyptic alarm bells aside, one has to ask, what exactly will these inhumanly fast robots be used to do? Will they remain just an entertainment novelty? Or will they soon be running through a battlefield near you?
KFC China has cooked up a burger no one asked for. Meet the Oreo Chicken Burger, launching on the 28th of August. You get a fried chicken fillet, lettuce, mashed potatoes and crushed Oreos, all sandwiched between dark Oreo-inspired buns. The internet is calling it a bioweapon. When crispy chicken meets crushed Oreos, your taste buds might just need a minute. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell a story. Hollywood honors country music star Dolly Parton at her Walk of Fame star as the Empire State Building in New York lit up in pink sparkles, in tribute to the singer who died at 80 on Tuesday after a brief battle with cancer. In Spain, thousands of revelers dive into tomato pulp as the annual La Tomatina Food Fight Festival kicks off. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky receives a puppy, an American pit bull terrier, as a gift from former US boxer Terence Crawford. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1789, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was adopted by France's National Constituent Assembly during the height of the French Revolution. It became a foundational document protecting the fundamental rights of liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. Leaving you on that note, thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
It doesn't matter what. If you enjoyed today's show, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if a story stood out to you, drop us a comment. We'd love to know what caught your attention. Tell us what matters to you and what you'd like to see us cover next. Connect with us and we'll always connect back.
The revolution is made through human beings, but individuals must forge their revolutionary spirit day by day.
Every revolution begins with a question. Why should the world stay the same? One voice rises, then another. An idea becomes a movement. A movement becomes history. 5 revolutionaries, 5 stories of struggle, reform, and rebellion. They faced prisons. They faced bullets. They faced empires. But they never stopped fighting. Not for power, for justice, for equality, for freedom. The revolutionary